Oh, Mojo Monday with a little earth, wind, and fire.
We've got it all. Earth, wind, and fire.
Yeah.
What a great name for a band.
It really kind of is. And I think I'm going to pull it in here a little later. But Rick, how are you? It's our favorite time of the week. It is Mojo Monday, and we're kicking off a new series. It's a Wheel of Life series, but it's a Wheel of Life with a little bit different spin, right? We're gonna go through what the Wheel of Life is, but not just what the Wheel of Life is, but how did you shape your thinking in each bucket around the Wheel of Life? Rick, you wrote a book, and it's about to be published, my understanding, and it really was kind of about the Wheel of Life. Why don't you just tell us real quick about that?
Yeah, I mean, the book's called Stop Settling, Your Guide to a Regret-Free Life. And, at this point, looking over my shoulder, there were lessons along the way that I think triggered experiences and outcomes, that some of which I'm super proud and excited of, and some I look back and felt like if I had a framework earlier in life and I lived by that strategy or created a holistic plan, things could have even been better. And so I'm constantly working. I mean, we're all work in progress. So the book's really a story, kind of my story coming up. I had a bounce, quite a turbulent childhood would be an understatement. But inside of each of those was a silver lining and a lesson, and we fail forward. And those lessons are what shape our perspective, which leads us to this portion of our series, which I'm really excited about. And, a regret, what's more important than a regret-free life?
Absolutely. And, Rick, we talk a lot about living a life by design, not by default, or being purposeful and not just letting life happen to you, but going out and taking the hill, right? And
absolutely
going out and being super design oriented or super purposeful about creating the experience you want out of this time we all have on earth, right? And
100%.
The Wheel of Life is just a good segmented break it down of all the different facets of life that you could be very purposeful about.
Absolutely. And if you strategically align the spokes, a wheel, flat spots on the wheel, and I consider the wheel of life literally proverbial and functioning like a wheel. And that if there's an area that's significantly deficient in your life, it's not uncommon that as the wheel rolls, you hit that spot and it's a bump and it doesn't create momentum and efficiency. And so the idea is you don't have to have a fully inflated 10 out of 10 in each category, but if there's a 1 or 2 out of 10 in any of the 12 categories, it's probably going to cause some pain at some point in an uncomfortable ride that's not holistically joyful. And man, the goal in life, isn't it to have your best life? And so that's the point.
So can we start with fun?
Yeah, why not?
Can we start with fun and recreation? Would that be all right?
Yeah, recreation is a great one.
Yeah, so I would define recreation as an outside of work activity that you enjoy, that brings you joy in life. And that's how I would kind of frame up how I think about recreation. Would you add anything to that?
Well, you nailed it. I mean, it's easy to say, well, recreation is anything other than work, but that doesn't mean you can't feel a sense of recreation inside of your work as well. And that's if, for instance, your goal setting for the year, why not take either your memo pad or, you could go for a long hike, recreate, but also allow your brain to freelance and to explore just that open space of, not being confined to a day planner for an hour or a few. So, but you're right. I think the real definition probably for most of us is something that we consider fun and less stressful. And, to some degree, maybe there's physical, energy and activity, and you get the bonus benefit of fitness, but it's getting outside of the office and outside of your normal, 9-to-5 type behavior.
Sure. So how did you shape your thinking? And I'll share how I shaped mine, but what really shaped your thinking around this bubble of recreation?
Well, for me, it's just, I have to have counterbalance, man. I run hard and I get so wound tight around, and for me to release from, the premeditated and the stacking of thoughts in the work environment, there's just, it's stressful, life's stressful. And so I think a starting place for recreation and what it does for me is allows me to, almost shed weight and baggage in the process of it, and we can talk about the different activities at some point. And I know we are, that we enjoy and that we find, fulfilling on the recreation side of that box, if you will, if you're checking
Yeah.
the recreation box.
One
What
of the
about you?
interesting things that I've learned about recreation over the years is recreation actually tends to be where most of us recharge.
Mm,
And we live these professional lives and these work lives, and there's a certain amount of stress associated with that. There's a certain amount of effort and energy expelled into that space in our life. But it's really important to have a balance. It's really important to recharge. It's the yin to the yang. It's the hot to the cold. It's all those balance things in life, and recreation really turns out to be that recharge. And Rick, I used to coach people and talk to people about the elements of life, right? And the earth and wind and fire and water. And I would say that, at the end of the day, most people find one of those elements that soothes their soul the most. Meaning, if I'm an earth person, I might need to go out into nature. I might need to go hike a mountain or spend some time camping. If I'm a fire person, I probably just need to find a way to sit around a fire pit and let that trance of the fire come at me. If I'm a wind, maybe I'm jumping out of an airplane. I don't know. I never really came up with a good wind one, but at the end of the day, for me,
how about sailing? What if you enjoy sailing? Yeah.
There you go. So for me, it was always water.
Yeah.
The calming effect of the water was a recharge for me. And I would always lend myself to finding my place by a river or a stream, or finding myself out on a boat. And it recharged my soul. What about you when we talk about these elements? Like, what speaks to Rick Hale?
So I think my brother-in-law has an interesting way to start a conversation. He's incredibly brilliant. He's, history major and a principal of a school. And so he's kind of in tune with kids, which we're all just adult kids at some point. And he asked me this the other night at dinner. He says, what's your Mount Rushmore of locations or places you could go that brings you to ground zero, that connects you to who you really are deep down? And so think in terms of that, Mount Rushmore just being the pinnacle, the peak, the biggest non-negotiable, carved in stone sort of place. And so the earth, wind, and fire analogy is great. It's a good starting place for redefining what recreation could be. And, mine's on a mountaintop, and it's either snowboarding or hiking, just because the vistas. It's interesting for me. I feel the presence of spiritual energy and of God in my world. And the closer I am to it, and the smaller I feel and the bigger the world looks, the more I connect with, not only what I am, but what I'm not. And I'd let go of things that I think I'm controlling. And I think one of the flaws in life is we think we control more things than we do. And so that's the gift, I think, in recreation, is the release of some of that energy. And when you release that energy, you become a better human being to yourself, because you give yourself a little more margin, and you take a few deeper breaths, and you just absorb that oneness and that smallness and the bigness all at the same time. And that's a gift. And I think you become a better friend, better husband, better partner, and a better person in the process, by shedding some of that stress and that tension and that release.
Yeah.
So water and mountains, those are the two places. Anything on
Absolutely.
water and anything high up that gives me a vista that's undeniably, massive, usually gets it lowers my temperature and expands my thinking.
There you go. There's this concept of chance and versus choice, right? And I don't think you ended up on those mountains, or I don't think you ended up at the water by chance.
No.
Like, you made choices in your life to get you there. Talk to me about that.
Well, so as an example, if you commit to, the choice, not chance thing, I think that was Nietzsche who said that, or I may be missing it. All that to
really
say,
smart. Keep going.
all that to say that you can, either by design or default is another way to say it. And I remember years ago, when I was going 100 miles an hour every minute of every day, building, growing, running, serving clients. I remember one year waking up at the end of the year, and all I took was a couple of vacations and a few weekends, and it was just very random. And I realized that for me to have success and be the person I want to be, to create that counterbalance around family and recreation, I needed to be more proactive. I also knew that if I waited for organic energy, which is the chance side of that equation, I would default to probably choosing to work or to fulfill a client's need. And, hey, we'll do that next week. And when here's how I strategically attacked it. I found a travel agent in December, and we discussed one trip per month. Per quarter. So that would be 4 trips. And I knew that. So my goal was 6 trips. 4 would be pre-designed, pre-purchased, and pre-scripted. And the other 2 would fall, into the normal weeks that everyone seems to take a deep breath, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so I had 6 weeks off that year, which at the time was an unfathomable thought, until I prescribed and I created a path and pre-invested in it. And once I put money on it, trust me, I made the flight.
There you go. This vacation concept, right? Like, how many people live their life where by chance, I use the word chance, where they don't take any vacations because they never actually plan it. And then they end up just going somewhere by default, right? Or by chance. Versus just really saying, hey, these are the choices I want to make this year, like you did once a quarter, and went and booked those vacations, right?
Yeah, and you can build it around your, that Mount Rushmore of places that gives you the greatest amount of energy and joy. I love history. So, Europe would be a great example. In that year, we booked a week, actually booked 2 weeks in one trip, where we went to Barcelona for a few days, jumped on a cruise ship and toured the entire coast of Italy into France, and went to Monaco. And, we hit all the major Naples, we hit Florence. And then we zipped over to Austria. Once you're there, nothing's really far. But I promise you, for me to wake up and take a 2-week trip to Europe, it would not have happened without a travel agent and pre-purchasing the cruise ship and the flights. And then once it got exciting once it became real. And so one thing you might want to do is go, okay, what are my bucket list adventures? And then just put one on your calendar every single December, plan when it's going to be, and make it happen. So bucket list adventures would be a really good start to taking recreation to the next level.
Yeah. So one is, I want to kind of pull the curtain back for a second, is we're really talking about how you shape your thinking around this concept of recreation. So obviously you got to figure out what you decide. How do you define recreation? And then my advice was really understand that recreation becomes your recharge. It becomes your zen. And spend a little time internal understanding what does that for you. Right. Are you a mountaintop hair on fire snowboarder? Are you somebody like sit on the lake and float? Like what brings that recharge to you? And then the third part of this is really that by choice, not by chance, and really being purposeful about creating that space in your life around what recreation is. And if it's as simple as calling a travel agent and making sure you book that recreation in your life ahead of time, it's a really powerful principle. Rick, I want to throw a couple books out there. And I know you've read this first book, and I've read this book as well, called The 4-Hour Workweek.
Sure.
I always get nervous recommending this book to people. Like, I'm not telling you to only work 4 hours. But the concept of it unlocks something in your brain. What did it unlock for you?
Well, for me, it was just really an expanded 80-20 rule principle. It's the recognition that quality is more important than quantity when it comes to time on task. And if you create enough quality, you earn the right and the margin to reapportion or to redistribute your resources, not only financially, but with your time, which is the most precious and most valuable resource. And so I know this too, and I bet you've had this happen, but when you're going on a vacation, what happens at work?
Yeah, boom.
Like the week before, the day before, 2 days before. It's amazing how all of a sudden quality time becomes the focus, and you're hyper productive and you're hyper intentional, and you knock down big rocks like never before, knowing that you don't want to drag that anchor with you on your trip. And so that's what it is. It's about quality time and investing in the big rocks first and foremost, and then creating enough margin that the other ancillary things that create a holistic, awesome, really the life that you want by design just works itself into a plan.
Yeah. And to me, what it unlocked is really, it gave me permission to realize it's not how many hours I'm sitting in the chair. It's really how many productive hours I'm sitting in the chair. And because Some people define their success by how many hours. And the truth is we need to unlock the time conundrum to success and understand that it's not how much time you dedicated, it's literally how much productive time you dedicated, which is really the 80-20 principle. And the reason that's such an important concept for this conversation today is because you will always have time for work that will overrun recreation if you don't understand that principle. Meaning you will fill the time allowed, and recreation will come secondary. That recharge comes secondary, and you're living your life out of balance.
Yep. The other thing you need to ponder is who's involved in the experience of the recreation, and make sure that you honor their Mount Rushmore, their need, their want in the experience. Because if it's all about, if you're just dragging people along, without their, willingness or their excitement for it, it may be less fulfilling. And tied to that is that it's really hard to shut things off. But the secret to really being present is to shut down digital, shut down your technology, and spend a few hours really investing in the people you're with and the experience you're intending to have. And, these pieces and parts and pretending to be there, but not, I think your soul knows the difference, and you don't get the full recharge. Yeah. So analyze where you land in that paradigm, and then become more intentional about either delegating or outsourcing those important calls that might come in that distract you from that moment in time. That's really that you've created a space of honor for it.
Yeah. Another book I'd throw out is The Happiness of Pursuit. It's not the pursuit of happiness. It's the inverse of that. It's written by a guy named Chris Guillebeau, I think is how you pronounce his last name. But it's literally short stories of people that have gone on pursuits in their life. A father and a son wanted to visit every baseball stadium. A couple wanted to visit every cathedral, and it's all these little short stories, but it spoke to me because it gave me permission to have a pursuit. And recreation really is a pursuit. It's a pursuit of finding what speaks to your soul, right? And so that one was good. But for you, we were talking earlier, where do you actually seek information for a lot of your recreation stuff?
Yeah, when it comes to recreation, I don't know that it's in a textbook necessarily, but the advent of the internet changed everything. It changed everything. Like, there's no secrets. And so I can't tell you how often I'll do top 10 this, top 10 that, dive sites, mountain biking trails, the 10 most, approachable and easy to, navigate hiking trails in North Georgia. There's some amazing hiking, inside of, if you're from Georgia, inside of an hour, or two at the most, to get to some amazing, majestic sites. And so I think Google and YouTube changed everything, because you not only can you pre-qualify and get feedback that you can then decide if it deserves merit on your bucket list, or even your call it just next week list. Next Saturday, I'm going to do something I've never done. Give me the top 10, fill in the blanks, and within an hour of whatever. And so that's how I approach it. But YouTube, you could even pre-qualify it with people, watch the video and experience it through their lens, and then decide if it warrants putting it in your day planner and part of your life.
So what are your activities? Give me your top 3. What brings recreation to Rick?
Yeah, so this stage of my life, it's anything on 2 wheels. I love mountain biking and motorcycling and dirt biking. That's kind of fun for me. There's just an energy with 2 wheels over 4 wheels. Especially downhill mountain biking. I like to go out west, where they actually, just like you would when you go skiing, they cart your bike up on the lift and you follow it, hop off, and it's all downhill and flowy and fun. But that's me. So mountain biking and anything on water would be the second thing. Water, just, I don't know, I feel this peaceful energy, and whether it's just wake surfing and wakeboarding, or whether I'm fishing, it's just, I love the water.
I'm not too far from that. I like hiking. I like travel, but travel to me is really about immersing myself in a culture that I'm not, that's foreign to me, right? And
Sure.
And feeling and living in a culture. And then, of course, water. I feel at most at peace if I'm having a stressful day or a stressful week, and I can go get out on a lake or go sit by even just a little stream of water. It soothes my soul, Rick.
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about living a regret-free life. And you got to make sure that you're not, if your soul calls for something and you don't do it, I'm convinced it converts into some version of tension and potentially like a cancerous attack. So that may sound extreme, but I promise you, if your inner voice says it needs and wants it, you should feed that.
There you go. Well, Rick, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I love the Wheel of Life, and it just is a visual representation of what I should focus on, what I should pay attention to.
100%. Step one.
Give us a challenge.
I mean, the challenge is start with, if the Wheel of Life is available on, I think, on our YouTube page, and we'll post it as well if you don't have it already. But just give yourself a 1 to 10 tick mark on each one and recognize where the flat spots are. And then, given the conversation today, figure out where you can recreate more intentional and honor the people you care about in that experience. So maybe script something in the next week that's local and easy and short. And then maybe the next quarter or two, go ahead and plan something and pull something from your bucket list for 2022.
There you go.
All right.